St. Helena is a volcanic tropical island in the South Atlantic Ocean, 4,000 kilometers east of Rio de Janeiro and 1,950 kilometers west of the Cunene River, which marks the border between Namibia and Angola in southwestern Africa. It is part of the British Overseas Territory of St. Helena, Ascension and Tristan da Cunha. St. Helena measures about 16 by 8 kilometers and has a population of 4,255. It was named after Saint Helena of Constantinople. The island, one of the most remote islands in the world, was uninhabited when discovered by the Portuguese in 1502. It was an important stopover for ships sailing to Europe from Asia and South Africa for centuries. Napoleon was imprisoned there in exile by the British, as were Dinah Zulu Kasachweyo and more than 5,000 Boers taken prisoner during the Second Boer War. Between 1791 and 1833, St. Helena became the site of a series of experiments in conservation, reforestation and attempts to boost rainfall artificially. This environmental intervention was closely linked to the conceptualization of the processes of environmental change and helped establish the roots of environmentalism. St. Helena is Britain's second oldest remaining overseas territory after Bermuda. History. Early history. Most historical accounts state that the island was discovered on the 21st of May 1502 by Galician navigator João da Nova sailing at the service of Portugal, and that he named it Santa Helena after Helena of Constantinople. Another theory holds that the island found by da Nova was actually Tristan da Cunha, 2,430 kilometers to the south, and that St. Helena was discovered by some of the ships attached to the squadron of the Estevão da Gama expedition on 30 July 1503. However, a paper published in 2015 reviewed the discovery date and dismissed the 18th of August as too late for da Nova to make a discovery and then return to Lisbon by the 11th of September 1502. Whether he sailed from St. Helena at Tristan da Cunha, it demonstrates that the 21st of May is probably a Protestant rather than Catholic or Orthodox feast day, first quoted in 1596 by Jan Huygen van Linschoten, who was probably mistaken because the island was discovered several decades before the Reformation and start of Protestantism. The alternative discovery date of the 3rd of May is suggested as being historically more credible. It is the Catholic feast day for the finding of the true cross by St. Helena in Jerusalem, and cited by Eduardo Duarte Lopes and Sir Thomas Herbert. The Portuguese found the island uninhabited with an abundance of trees and fresh water. They imported livestock, fruit trees and vegetables, and built a chapel and 1 or 2 houses. They formed no permanent settlement, but the island was an important rendezvous point and source of food for ships traveling from Asia to Europe, and frequently sick mariners were left on the island to recover before taking passage on the next ship to call on the island. Englishman Sir Francis Drake probably located the island on the final leg of his circumnavigation of the world. Further visits by other English explorers followed, and once St. Helena's location was more widely known, English ships of war began to lie in wait in the area to attack Portuguese India carracks on the way home. In developing the Far East trade, the Dutch also began to frequent the island. The Portuguese and Spanish soon gave up regularly calling at the island, partly because they used ports along the West African coast, but also because of attacks on the shipping, the desecration of their chapel and religious icons, destruction of the livestock, and destruction of plantations by Dutch and English sailors. The Dutch Republic formally made claim to St. Helena in 1633, although there is no evidence that they ever occupied, colonized, or fortified it. By 1651, the Dutch had mainly abandoned the island in favor of the colony at the Cape of Good Hope. East India Company in 1657, Oliver Cromwell granted the English East India Company a charter to govern St. Helena, and, the following year, the company decided to fortify the island and colonize it with planters. The first governor, Captain John Dutton, arrived in 1659, making St. Helena one of Britain's oldest colonies outside North America and the Caribbean. A fort and houses were built. After the restoration of the English monarchy in 1660, the East India Company received a royal charter, giving it the sole right to fortify and colonize the island. The fort was renamed James Fort and the town Jamestown, in honor of the Duke of York, later James II of England. Between January and May 1673, the Dutch East India Company forcibly took the island. Before English reinforcements restored English East India Company control, the company experienced difficulty attracting new immigrants, and sentiments of unrest and rebellion fermented among the inhabitants. Ecological problems of deforestation, soil erosion, vermin and drought led Governor Isaac Pike in 1715 to suggest that the population be moved to Mauritius, but this was not acted upon, and the company continued to subsidize the community because of the island's strategic location. A census in 1723 recorded 1,110 people, including 610 slaves. 18th-century governors tried to tackle the island's problems by implementing tree plantation, improving fortifications, eliminating corruption, building a hospital, tackling the neglect of crops and livestock, controlling the consumption of alcohol, and introducing legal reforms. The island enjoyed a lengthy period of prosperity from about 1770. Captain James Cook visited the island in 1775 on the final leg of his second circumnavigation of the world. St. James Church was erected in Jamestown in 1774, and Plantation House was built in 1791–92 and has since been the official residence of the governor. Edmund Halley visited St. Helena on leaving the University of Oxford in 1676 and set up an astronomical observatory with a 7.3-metre long aerial telescope, with the intention of studying stars from the southern hemisphere. The site of this telescope is near St. Matthew's Church in Hutsgate in the Longwood district. The 680-metre high hill there is named for him and is called Halley's Mount. Throughout this period, St. Helena was an important port of call of the East India Company. East Indiamen would stop there on the return leg of the voyages to British India and China. At St. Helena, ships could replenish supplies of water and provisions and, during wartime, form convoys that would sail under the protection of vessels of the Royal Navy. Captain James Cook's vessel HMS Endeavour anchored and resupplied off the coast of St. Helena in May 1771 on its return from the European discovery of the east coast of Australia and rediscovery of New Zealand. The importation of slaves was made illegal in 1792. Governor Robert Patton recommended that the company import Chinese labor to supplement the rural workforce. The coolie laborers arrived in 1810, and the numbers reached 600 by 1818. Many were allowed to stay, and the descendants became integrated into the population. An 1814 census recorded 3,507 people on the island. British rule and Napoleon's exile in 1815, the British government selected St. Helena as the place of detention for Napoleon Bonaparte. He was taken to the island in October 1815. Napoleon stayed at the Briars Pavilion on the grounds of the Balcombe family's home until his permanent residence at Longwood House was completed in December 1815. Napoleon died there on 5 May 1821. British East India Company. After Napoleon's death, the thousands of temporary visitors were withdrawn and the East India Company resumed full control of St. Helena. Between 1815 and 1830, the EIC made the packet schooner St. Helena available to the government of the island, which made multiple trips per year between the island and the Cape, carrying passengers both ways and supplies of wine and provisions back to the island. Napoleon praised St. Helena's coffee during his exile on the island, and the product enjoyed a brief popularity in Paris in the years after his death. The importation of slaves to St. Helena was banned in 1792, but the phased emancipation of over 800 resident slaves did not take place until 1827, which was still some 6 years before the British Parliament passed legislation to ban slavery in the colonies. Crown Colony. Under the provisions of the 1833 India Act, control of St. Helena was passed from the East India Company to the British Crown, becoming a Crown Colony. Subsequent administrative cost-cutting triggered the start of a long-term population decline whereby those who could afford to tended to leave the island for better opportunities elsewhere. The latter half of the 19th century saw the advent of steamships not reliant on trade winds, as well as the diversion of Far East trade away from the traditional South Atlantic shipping lanes to a route via the Red Sea. These factors contributed to a decline in the number of ships calling at the island from 1,100 in 1855 to only 288 in 1889. In 1840, a British naval station established to suppress the African slave trade was based on the island, and between 1840 and 1849 over 15,000 freed slaves, known as liberated Africans, were landed there. In 1858, the French Emperor Napoleon III successfully gained the possession, in the name of the French government, of Longwood House and the lands around it, last residence of Napoleon I. It is still French property, administered by a French representative and under the authority of the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. On the 11th of April 1898, American Joshua Slocum, on his famous and epic solo round-the-world voyage, arrived at Jamestown. He departed on the 20th of April 1898 for the final leg of his circumnavigation, having been extended hospitality from the governor, His Excellency Sir R.A. Standale, presented 2 lectures on his voyage and been invited to Longwood by the French consular agent. In 1900 and 1901, over 6,000 Boer prisoners were held on the island, and the population reached its all-time high of 9,850 in 1901. A local industry manufacturing fibre from New Zealand flax was successfully re-established in 1907 and generated considerable income during the First World War. Ascension Island was made a dependency of St. Helena in 1922, and Tristan da Cunha followed in 1938. During the Second World War, the United States built Wide Awake Airport on Ascension in 1942, but no military use was made of St. Helena. During this period, the island enjoyed increased revenues through the sale of flax, with prices peaking in 1951. However, the industry declined because of transportation costs and competition from synthetic fibers. The decision by the British Post Office to use synthetic fibers for its mail bags was a further blow. contributing to the closure of the island's flax mills in 1965. From 1958, the Union Castle shipping line gradually reduced its service calls to the island. Cunene Shipping, based in Avonmouth, replaced the Union Castle Line mail ship service in 1977, using the RMS Saint Helena, 1981 to present the British Nationality Act. 1981 reclassified St Helena and the other Crown colonies as British dependent territories. The islanders lost the right of abode in Britain. For the next 20 years, many could find only low-paid work with the island government, and the only available employment outside St Helena was on the Falkland Islands and Ascension Island. The Development and Economic Planning Department was formed in 1988 to contribute to raising the living standards of the people of St Helena. In 1989, Prince Andrew launched the replacement RMS St Helena to serve the island. The vessel was specially built for the Cardiff-Cape Town route and features a mixed cargo passenger layout. The St Helena Constitution took effect in 1989 and provided that the island would be governed by a governor, commander-in-chief, and an elected executive and legislative council. In 2002, the British Overseas Territories Act 2002 granted full British citizenship to the islanders, and renamed the dependent territories the British Overseas Territories. In 2009, St Helena and its two territories received equal status under a new constitution, and the British Overseas Territory was renamed St Helena, Ascension and Tristan da Cunha. The UK government has spent £250 million in the construction of the island's airport. This is aimed at helping the island become more self-sufficient, encouraging economic development while reducing dependence on British government aid. It is also expected to kick-start the tourism industry, with up to 30,000 visitors expected annually. As of August 2015, ticketing was postponed until an airline could be firmly designated. The first plane landed on the 15th of September 2015, with the first large passenger jet landing on the 18th of April of the following year. Although the airport is not yet officially open due to concerns about wind shear geography, located in the South Atlantic Ocean on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, more than 2,000 kilometers from the nearest major land mass, St Helena is one of the most remote places in the world. The nearest port on the continent is Namibia in southern Angola, and the nearest international airport, the Quatro de Fevereiro Airport of Angola's capital Luanda. Connections to Cape Town in South Africa are used for most shipping needs, such as the mailboat that serves the island, the RMS St Helena. The island is associated with two other isolated islands in the southern Atlantic, also British territories. Ascension Island, about 1,300 kilometers due northwest in more equatorial waters, and Tristan da Cunha, which is well outside the tropics, 2,430 kilometers to the south. The island is situated in the Western Hemisphere and has the same longitude as Cornwall in the United Kingdom. Despite its remote location, it is classified as being in West Africa by the United Nations. The island of St Helena has a total area of 122 square kilometers, and is composed largely of rugged terrain of volcanic origin. Coastal areas are covered in volcanic rock and warmer and drier than the center. The highest point of the island is Diana's Peak at 818 meters. In 1996 it became the island's first national park. Much of the island is covered by New Zealand flax, a legacy of former industry, but there are some original trees augmented by plantations, including those of the Millennium Forest Project, which was established in 2002 to replant part of the lost great wood and is now managed by the St. Helena National Trust. When the island was discovered, it was covered with unique indigenous vegetation, including a remarkable cabbage tree species. The island's hinterland must have been a dense tropical forest, but the coastal areas were probably also quite green. The modern landscape is very different, with widespread bare rock in the lower areas, although inland it is green, mainly due to introduced vegetation. There are no native land mammals, but cattle, cats, dogs, donkeys, goats, mice, rabbits, rats and sheep have been introduced, and native species have been adversely affected as a result. The dramatic change in landscape must be attributed to these introductions. As a result, the string tree and the St. Helena olive are now extinct, and many of the other endemic plants are threatened with extinction. There are several rocks and islets off the coast, including Castle Rock, Speary Island, The Needle, Lower Black Rock, Upper Black Rock, Bird Island, Black Rock, Thompson's Valley Island, Peaked Island, Egg Island, Ladies' Chair, Lighter Rock, Long Ledge, Shore Island, George Island, Rough Rock Island, Flat Rock, The Boys, Sandy Bay Island, The Chimney, White Bird Island and Freighter's Rock, all of which are within 1 kilometre of the shore. The national bird of St. Helena is the St. Helena plover, known locally as the wirebird. It appears on the coat of arms of St. Helena and on the flag. Climate: the climate of St. Helena is tropical, marine and mild, tempered by the Benguela current and trade winds that blow almost continuously. The climate varies noticeably across the island. Temperatures in Jamestown, on the North Leeward shore, range between 21 to 28 degrees Celsius in the summer and 17 to 24 degrees Celsius during the remainder of the year. The temperatures in the central areas are, on average, 5 to 6 degrees Celsius lower. Jamestown also has a very low annual rainfall, while 750 to 1,000 millimeters falls per year on the higher ground and the south coast, where it is also noticeably cloudier. There are weather recording stations in the Longwood and Blue Hill districts. Administrative divisions. St. Helena is divided into 8 districts, each with a community center. The districts also serve as statistical divisions. The island is a single electoral area and elects 12 representatives to the Legislative Council of 15. Population. Demographics. St. Helena was first settled by the English in 1659, and the island has a population of about 4,250 inhabitants, mainly descended from people from Britain, settlers and soldiers, and slaves who were brought there from the beginning of settlement, initially from Africa, then India and Madagascar. The importation of slaves was made illegal in 1792, thus preventing any further increase in the numbers. In 1840, St. Helena became a provisioning station for the British West Africa Squadron, preventing slavery to Brazil, and many thousands of slaves were freed on the island. These were all African, and about 500 stayed while the rest were sent on to the West Indies and Cape Town, and eventually to Sierra Leone. Imported Chinese laborers arrived in 1810, reaching a peak of 618 in 1818, after which numbers were reduced. Only a few older men remained after the British Crown took over the government of the island from the East India Company in 1834. The majority were sent back to China, although records in the Cape suggest that they never got any farther than Cape Town. There were also a very few Indian Lascars who worked under the harbour master. The citizens of St. Helena hold British Overseas Territories citizenship. On the 21st of May 2002, full British citizenship was restored by the British Overseas Territories Act 2002. See also British nationality law. During periods of unemployment, there has been a long pattern of emigration from the island since the post-Napoleonic period. The majority of Saints emigrated to Britain, South Africa and in the early years, Australia. The population has steadily declined since the late 1980s and has dropped from 5,157 at the 1998 census to 4,255 in 2008. In the past, emigration was characterized by young unaccompanied persons leaving to work on long-term contracts on Ascension and the Falkland Islands. But since Saints were re-awarded British citizenship in 2002, emigration to Britain by a wider range of wage earners has accelerated due to the prospect of higher wages and better progression prospects. Religion. Most residents belong to the Anglican Communion and are members of the Diocese of St Helena, which has its own bishop and includes Ascension Island. The 150th anniversary of the diocese was celebrated in June 2009. Other Christian denominations on the island include Roman Catholic, Salvation Army, Baptist and, in more recent times, Seventh-day Adventist, New Apostolic, and Jehovah's Witnesses. The Catholics are pastorally served by the Mission Suiuris of St Helena, Ascension and Tristan da Cunha, whose office of ecclesiastical superior is vested in the Apostolic Prefecture of the Falkland Islands. The Baha'i faith has also been represented on the island since 1954. Politics. Executive authority in St Helena is vested in Queen Elizabeth II and is exercised on her behalf by the Governor of St Helena. The Governor is appointed by the Queen on the advice of the British government. Defence and foreign affairs remain the responsibility of the United Kingdom. There are 15 seats in the Legislative Council of St Helena, a unicameral legislature, in addition to a Speaker and a Deputy Speaker. 12 of the 15 members are elected in elections held every 4 years. The 3 ex officio members of the Chief Secretary, Financial Secretary and Attorney General. The Executive Council is presided over by the Governor, and consists of 3 ex officio officers and 5 elected members of the Legislative Council appointed by the Governor. There is no elected Chief Minister, and the Governor acts as the head of government. In January 2013 it was proposed that the Executive Council would be led by a Chief Counsellor, who would be elected by the members of the Legislative Council and would nominate the other members of the Executive Council. These proposals were put to a referendum on the 23rd of March 2013, where they were defeated by 158 votes to 42 on a 10% turnout. Both Ascension Island and Tristan da Cunha have an administrator appointed to represent the Governor of St Helena. One commentator has observed that, notwithstanding the high unemployment resulting from the loss of full passports during 1981 to 2002, the level of loyalty to the British monarchy by the St Helena population is probably not exceeded in any other part of the world. King George VI is the only reigning monarch to have visited the island. This was in 1947 when the King, accompanied by Queen Elizabeth, Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret, were travelling to South Africa. Prince Philip arrived at St Helena in 1957, followed by his son, Prince Andrew, who visited as a member of the armed forces in 1984, and his daughter, the Princess Royal, in 2002. Human rights. In 2012, the government of St Helena funded the creation of the Saint Helena Human Rights Action Plan 2012 to 2015. Work is being done under this action plan, including publishing awareness-raising articles in local newspapers, providing support for members of the public with human rights queries, and extending several UN conventions on human rights to Saint Helena. Legislation to set up an Equality and Human Rights Commission was passed by Legislative Council in July 2015. This commenced operation in October 2015. Child abuse scandal. In 2014 there were reports of child abuse in St. Helena. Britain's Foreign and Commonwealth Office has been accused of lying to the United Nations about child abuse in St. Helena to cover up allegations, including cases of a police officer having raped a 4-year-old girl and of a police officer having mutilated a 2-year-old. The British government admits it made an erroneous report to the United Nations when it denied that child abuse was rife in St. Helena. Sasha Wask-UC and her team arrived on St. Helena on the 17th of March 2015 to commence the inquiry and departed on the 1st of April 2015. Announcements were made in local newspapers in week ending the 13th of March 2015, and a website has been set up at www.wasinquiry.org. The WAS report was published on the 10th of December 2015. It found that the lurid headlines in the Daily Mail had come from 2 social workers whom it described as incompetent. Biodiversity. St. Helena has long been known for its high proportion of endemic birds and vascular plants. The highland areas contain most of the 400 endemic species recognized to date. Much of the island has been identified by BirdLife International as being important for bird conservation, especially the endemic St. Helena plover wirebird, and for seabirds breeding on the offshore islets and stacks. In the northeast and the southwest important bird areas. On the basis of these endemics and an exceptional range of habitats, St. Helena is on the United Kingdom's tentative list for future UNESCO World Heritage Sites. St. Helena's biodiversity, however, also includes marine vertebrates, invertebrates, fungi, non-vascular plants, seaweeds and other biological groups. To date, very little is known about these, although more than 200 lichen-forming fungi have been recorded, including 9 endemics, suggesting that many significant discoveries remain to be made.